Well, another great night around the fire, Jim. How you doing this evening, my friend?
I'm doing great. I don't know if you want to be around a fire tonight. It's pretty hot outside. It's 27 here, and the humidex is 34 out of the blue.
It is true. It is 100% true. It is an early fire too. Still lots of light. You know, I know summer's coming to an end. This is probably I believe it's the last weekend, weekend in summer, and now we get into fall. But it is still fairly light for this time of day, and there is still lots of fish to be had. Speaking of which, Jim, you've been busy out in the back. You've been hooking a few hogs lately.
Holy jump in the backyard guru, as you said, has been at it for sure. And it's really cool because every night it's darker when I catch the fish. And I've come to the conclusion, and I know by the street lights going on, it's the time, it's not the darkness. Because last night I caught them all after it was almost black dark. But 2 nights before, it wasn't, 3 nights before the beginning of the week, it wasn't quite that dark, obviously, because it's changing so fast now, the time. So I'm thinking it's the actual time that the fish are biting. Because you always hear me say it's like 20 minutes before it gets dark.
Yeah.
Well, it's down to like 10 minutes after it's dark now. A guy noticed, he said to me, I noticed some of the pictures, the street lights are reflecting in the water, and in others, it's almost dark. And he said a week ago, it wasn't dark, but it was the same time, you know? It's just that it gets dark earlier. And it's really neat. I don't know, that gets into that kinky stuff about fish, you know, like you wonder, are they, you know, it's got nothing to do with it being dark. They're eating at the same time every night.
You know what I like about it, Jim, is the dusk bite for me is something that I truly love. And to me, it shortens up that feeding window each day. And as I said, it just seems to align itself so that, you know, the sun is going down just as you're leaving work. And by the time you get to any of your honey holes or, you know, near shore fisheries, those fish are just ready for you. They seem to be just lined up and ready for you.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, and there's no doubt about it. There is something magical to first thing and late at night. But I always tell people, just remember, you know, all the fish you see caught in bass and walleye tournaments, they're all caught in the daytime.
Yep, 100%.
So the fish are, like, the fish can be had in the daytime, you know?
Absolutely.
It's
Jim, are you...
one thing, if you're gonna fish in the dark, though, you got to be prepared.
This is true.
You got to be prepared.
This is true. Now, we got Erica, who is going for pike tomorrow. What species are you targeting?
Oh, myself?
Yeah.
I'm going to be targeting painting jig heads tomorrow. I don't do as much as I used to, but we're going to be painting a pile of fluff.
Wow, there you go. Well,
They're
speaking of...
for me to do because they're all black. It's quick.
Yeah.
2 or 3 quick coats, a coat of sealer, and away we go. Eh?
Well, you know, it's nice to see that orders are still coming in, even though it's getting close to the end of the season anyway, at least the summer season. But it's nice to see that.
This will be for next year.
Oh, okay, right on.
Getting them painted because it's going to cool off outside, so you can't paint outside.
Right.
Because I paint in the garage. I got myself a little fan out there and everything. And
nice.
Out there, but no, it's going to be a busy weekend. Plus, they've got the CSFL Ganny Cup there down in Gananoque.
Right.
I'll have to go down and have a peek at the blast off in the morning and heckle the boys, and should be good.
Well, no one's going to be able to heckle them as well as you, buddy. So I wish you luck with that. Speaking of tackle and speaking of painting and fluff and everything else, tonight's guest, I can't say that I believe I ever met Chris. Tell us a little bit about what the years you've had with Chris and some of the things that you guys have done together over the years.
Well, I've known, you know, Chris and I have never gone fishing.
Oh.
And that almost bugs me that we've never been in a boat. But Chris has done a lot of good things in his life. He's very well respected in the industry. Spent quite a few years working for Berkeley, and then went down to the U.S. Worked down there for a few years, and then he just wanted to be back in Canada. So he came back up here, and he landed himself a great position with Rapala USA. and of course that takes in Canada too. And he's a brand manager now for I believe it's VMC, Lord Jensen, and a couple of other lines that they have. But yeah, just an all-around great guy. Done a lot of things with kids in the past. Always quick to get involved, like we're doing tonight. The guy is a great fisherman. He fished some tournaments, but not a lot. And I mean, his passion really, I believe, is photography. Learning new stuff about fishing. He's really got the bug to learn. He's always out doing something. But when it comes to photography and photography of fish, they don't come any better. This guy knows his stuff.
Well, you're right. And I was looking through his rap sheet, and I can't wait to go through his bio with him. But before we do, obviously he has his own YouTube channel, and I wanted to play something real quick for you. This is the kind of guy he is. He's a how-to gent, loves to help folks out with DIY projects, and here's one that I would say you should take a look at because it's pretty simple, straightforward, and it gives you a place to put your rods. Let me click this up and get this going. There we go. Very simple, Jim. Very, very simple. It's probably the most underutilized area of people's garages is the ceiling. Just some T-brackets, finding out where the joists are, drill a few holes. And I know this is on time lapse, but I'm sure I'm going to get Chris to verify that this probably didn't take all that long. The video itself is only about a minute and 30 seconds, but it was done pretty quick. So it's a really easy and
very, very cool. If I had one of those, I'd have to have special braces on it.
Still shooting? Go to hardgrid.io.
Oh, I hear you. So let's bring in the one and only Chris Hockley. How you doing tonight, Chris?
Hey guys, I'm so excited to get a chance to chat with you guys tonight. It's always a hoot anytime Big Jim and I got together. But I do have to mention a couple things here. One is starting off the introduction with speaking of fluff, and I mean great job. I kind of expected more because Jim and I are so big. The introduction of with a combined weight of 700 pounds,
Chris, it was the hair. When you took your hat off before we went live, I'm like, wow, Jim, if you need any fluff tonight, there it is right there.
That is kind of the color right there.
My bonus. I could glue one of those to your head.
Oh.
So, yes, Chris, as I said, I had not a lot of time to go through some of the stuff that you have done, some of the accomplishments that you have, achieved over the years. My Lord, you have, if this was a criminal's rap sheet, my good Lord, buddy, you'd be in jail for life. But as I said, this starts back when you were in university. You went to the University of Guelph, got an honors in fisheries biology. I have to ask you, do you remember a Rick Mokia?
Yeah, that name sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he's someone that I spoke to on a regular basis at the University of Guelph. He's the one that dealt with all the aquaculture.
Okay.
Rick Mokia, I was interested to find out if you actually remembered him. School, fisheries biology, was it just because of the passion for fish? Were you an enthusiast? What led you down that path?
I've had just a blessed fishing life, I guess. I grew up on a farm just outside of, I guess a little bit north of Toronto. And we had 6 ponds. The biggest one was about 8 acres, and it was full of bass, and literally every single cast. And I caught so many. I mean, it was day in, day out. It's a great place for a kid to get hooked. And I just always knew I wanted to do something in the fishing industry. There wasn't anything else I loved and had a passion for. I mean, they used to make fun of me at school because I wouldn't go out for recess. I remember it was Bob Azumi's Big Bass book, and the joke around the house was I used to go at recess and read this thing, and the teacher's like, "You sure you don't want to go outside?" It's like, no, I'm outside enough. I got to learn this stuff. And my folks always said to me, they said, if you ever get up on stage in a tournament and you win it, and you need to hold up that book and say, thanks, Bob, for all the info. But, I have fished tournaments. I started fishing tournaments when I was probably 14 years old. I had to get a written note saying that it was okay from my parents that I'd be able to get in because you had to be 15 or something at the time. And I did quite a few. I used to fish 20 plus a year for probably 10 years, but I realized that we were always really consistent, but I wasn't the guy winning all the time. So I needed to come up with a better plan. And so that's what, the university idea was. And then I got out and ended up, as Jim said, with a number of great companies. I've worked, I've done writing for magazines, and photography fell in because of that. And then I got in with Berkeley and worked in television shows, and I've done everything. It seems like just to find out whether it was what I wanted to do or not. But I'm doing what I'm doing now.
I have to say, and these are some of the accomplishments that Chris has achieved, and I want everybody to have a listen, because this truly is remarkable, dude. And I salute you. It started with Canada in the Rough, advertising and sponsorship director in 2005, 2006. Then you went over to Bassman magazine. You were a columnist and a feature article writer in that magazine. I do remember Bassman magazine. Then you went to the Schoolgog Standard, which was basically your first freelance gig. And you were able to sort of, get out of the bubble of what typical writers would have to write about. And, of course, you were gearing in towards your passion, which, of course, was fishing. Then you got into Blitz Creek Pro Fishing, where you were the owner. This is something that obviously you started on your own. You figured, you know what, I like this. I like to write. I certainly want to write about, perhaps being a fishing guide or, a fishing star like that guy there.
Yeah.
But then you got into some big names.
Or that really guy there.
Yeah, or that guy there. Well, now, absolutely. Well, we all have a journey and a path, but Chris, yours has been paved in gold. Getting into the marketing manager in Canada for a bunch of other brands that are very notable, obviously Berkeley being one of them. You were there at Berkeley for a number of years, and now you have found a home. You were in pure fishing as well, but now you found a home at Rapala, and of course the umbrella of companies that they represent across North America. Tell us a little bit about, from start to finish, what that journey's been like.
It's a whirlwind for sure, and I'm so lucky to have a family that went along with me. My wife, I don't know how she does it; she puts up with me. But it was really interesting when I got in with pure fishing. The Blitz Creek Pro Fishing was actually a guiding business, so I used to guide full time, and it was a tough go in the Kawarthas, because it was sometimes tough for us to get a decent amount of fish, let alone having somebody that had never really fished that much before. So it was actually Gord Pizer called me and said, "Hey, you realize that this pure fishing joint's going to be moving out to Toronto, and the girl who was doing the marketing managing doesn't want to move." So long story short, I put in my resume, and a few calls from friends later, they said, "Yeah, let's bring it on." And all the stuff I've been doing all my life, I didn't have to tailor my resume at all. It was just, this is what we need. And so, yeah, it worked out really, really well. And I love the company, and I ended up getting promoted and ended up as North American marketing manager for Berkeley, which was, unbelievable. So we had to move south, and to say there's a monstrous difference between the Canadian market and down there, it was quite a learning curve. It was great, and it was a lot of fun. And then, like Jim said, I just decided, you know what, I love this down here, but I want to get home. And fortunately for me, this Rapala gig started, and I ended up as the product manager in Canada, and have since been promoted to the product manager for VMC, Suffolk, Lure Jensen, and Blue Fox for North America for Rapala. And I got to tell you, I want to be here the rest of my life. I've finally found what I'd like to do. We have an incredible team. I get to both kind of give my take on things, but also learn, because it's a group of avid anglers. So it's really, really cool.
Right on. Go ahead, Jim.
So Chris, are you actually in on the ground with the products being developed before they ever come to market?
Yeah, that's my job.
Because I know I always have guys. Yeah, I always see guys. They call me up and they say, "Oh, how do I get a job? I'm testing these products." I say, "Well, you're not testing them. They already tested them, or they wouldn't be in a package on the wall."
Yeah, definitely.
It's true, though. Like that's why whenever I get Shimano will send me something or whatever, and it it just has a few, etchings on it or something, and it's going to be something that's going to be new. I feel really blessed to be able to be in that position to get something like that, and that they listen to what you have to say, and it's just a really, really cool thing. But your level's obviously a complete different thing with a whole, plethora of brands there that especially like the VMC stuff. Like, I mean, I put up my VMC hat on that they said, I'm like, VMC, I don't have a contract with VMC. They don't pay me. There's nothing like that. But all the stuff, Scotty, that we talk about all the time, we're always talking about the hooks, all the different types of hooks that they have. I'm huge on the snaps. And I got to show you a picture on my phone here, and hope you can see it. But I know that I'm always telling him about using that VMC snap on a jig and wrap and adding the treble to the belly. And there's a thing, I don't know what it was in the In Fisherman or something the other day, but I saw this, and they were showing you how you should have your jig and wrap rigged. And if you look on there, the snap's on there, and the hybrid treble's on there.
Jim, it's so funny.
When you do things like that, you just realize like it's serious product, and it's stuff that people really, really need to have out there.
Yeah, and that that's the really cool thing. It's kind of funny you showed that one, because that bait is actually my design. That was a color that I did. It's the Golden Shiner for the Jig and Wrap series, and that was in Canada. We didn't develop a lot of the lures. We actually developed more colors than we did for a lot of the stuff. And we did and do rods and reels and that. Now we've since acquired 13 Fishing, which has allowed us to go down that road. But it's amazing to work with it, because there's nobody can say that this is solely my idea. I mean, there's way too many people that are vested into it and making sure that that it's successful. But ultimately, I'm in charge of the success, and I mean, I'm the guy appointed to if it doesn't, right? And this is still fairly new for me to be doing this job. I'm only 6 months into it, 8 months into it, wherever I'm at. But again, working with a fantastic team, and now we get so we're working with the top guides, we're working with the elite pro, we're working with our own team that's been at it for so long. So yeah, it's really, really cool to come up with an idea, or to be in the boat and say, this is a pain in the butt. Well, come up with a solution for it and let's make it. It's cool.
100%. And if you've fished at all over the years and have many years of fishing behind you, I don't think anybody can say that they've ever not used a Rapala. And I would have to say, back in the day when I was a youngster, one of the most revolutionary things that Rapala did with their crankbaits was the suspending model. You had the floating, you had the sinking, but that suspending model to me was a game changer when it came to crankbaits.
Yeah, crankbaits and jerkbaits. It's funny, and I'd love to kind of open this one up to ask you guys, because I mean, we get to see the sales, obviously, of within Canada, and we are a jerkbait company, our country. I mean, we sell more jerkbaits than anything else. The Husky jerk was the original, that suspending and then there was the X wrap, and there's been the shadow wraps, and there's so many different tools now. But what amazes me is the number of fish that are caught and how much money is won, even by pros in the U.S. that aren't sponsored by us. But the DT series is a perfect example. Perfect tools, select your depth, get down there and catch fish. Tons of money won on it. Easy to fish. And yet we just don't throw them up here very often. It's very rare. I know Jim throws them. I mean, Jim's a huge crankbait guy. I'm not sure about yourself, Scotty, but I've always wondered why. It's chuck it out, reel it in, catch fish. How hard is it?
Jim, I'll let you answer that, because as you're right, Chris. I'm more a plastics guy, so
for sure. And the crankbaits are under. Look, I had something come up in my memories on Facebook today, and it was a day I spent with Tim Allard, and he was absolutely shocked at me throwing square bills in lily pads.
Yeah.
And I told him, well, if you get past the pads and get it down before you get to them, it will come through. Very seldom do you get hung up unless there's a lot of mats and stuff. And the picture of the longest largemouth I've ever caught in Canada, caught on a DT Fat 03, came up in my.
Now that was the lure.
My memory. You can see the size of that thing. That's not
You're
a little
like 9
fish.
feet
There's
tall.
another
That
picture of
picture's
it
got to
here.
be 37 inches.
Wow.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. And that's the thing.
You
I
can
mean,
tell by the smile on my face, like I realized how big that fish was. But it
yeah.
just goes to show you when you use crankbaits. And then, I mean, I won my second GM Classic at Aurelia. Every fish except a couple the last day, which I got on a tube, came on crankbaits. Every one.
Yeah, and that's the funniest
thing. And it's not that jerkbaits don't catch fish. God, we know that works.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, right? The jerkbaits work really, really well, but it seems to be the real savvy guys, yourself and so many other top pros that are throwing these things, and somehow it stayed under the radar. And I don't know. I mean, you can take crankbaits and chuck them around and catch fish. I mean, it's a perfect example. Throwing them in the lily pads, you hit a pressure body of water like my local lake, Scugog. I mean, those pads, a plastic goes by them. They can tell you what brand, what color it is, and the UPC code on it. But they don't see crankbaits crawling through there, right?
It's true. Yeah. No,
yeah, the fish have their own scanners. They hold it up as lure goes by, tells them what it is. Oh, right. Don't like that.
Oh,
that's
but
speaking of Big Louie.
Speaking of plastics, though, I mean, Scotty, that's me too. I mean, I'm a plastics guy. I've always been. I mean, I throw a ton of cranks and a lot of hardware too, but I just have a soft spot for that soft plastic stuff. And I mean, one of the things, in talking VMC that came up through Mike Iaconelli and a trip that he did to Tokyo was the Tokyo rig. Yeah. And I don't know if you've had a chance to fish it or not, but my gosh, well, if you
know what they are, Scotty?
I do now, Jim. Yes.
I mean, a joke on the CFN about a Tokyo rig.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's just magic, and I mean, getting a chance to talk and sit down with Iaconelli and him explaining a whole bunch of different things, I mean, he's so detailed and the construction and why he wanted it. And I mean, this experience he had, but I mean, I was using it for punching because I don't know if anybody's seen it. I mean, I've got a light wire one here, but essentially it's the hook, and then you have a little ring. There you go. You can see it on the back. And you put a weight down here, bullet weights, and you just bend it, and it'll hold on there. This is one of the newest ones. It's one of the finesse ones, but we've had everything from worm hooks to wide gap hooks to flipping hooks. I mean, everything on these things. But if you put a single weight on it, that bait moves so freely. It's just, there's nothing like when you flip it or throw it out, you can see it moving in the air, and you're like, wow, you can. And then when it hits the bottom, the weight goes down into the muck and whatever is down there, and the bait stays up and it's freely moving. It punches through so easy because it's just this like dart that goes in. And, especially working for the company, you're so excited. You get a chance to use it. It works fantastic. And one of the things that Iaconelli said is, he said, those days when the fish bite down so hard on your bait and you set the hook and you're sure that you've got them, and then just at the last minute, they'll open their mouth and out comes. He says, what's happening is you can't set the hook hard enough to pull the weight through their mouth to actually set the hook. So when they open their mouth, out comes the bait. And he said, you eliminate that with this Tokyo rig because they're eating the plastic, not the weight. And that was one thing that kind of opened up my eyes to it. But it was actually a wired to fish video that we'd had them do where they did a single weight. And in this case, we've actually made them now. We do like football weights that you can put on them, and then drag a swim bait on them. Holy smokes. I saw that video. I was so excited. I just jumped right in the boat, went out fishing. I mean, it was so cool. There's so many applications, and the more people you talk to, the more you hear, hey, this is how I apply it.
And, the thing I do like about the Tokyo rig, as you mentioned, it kicks up sediment. So it makes it look like something's going on. And let's be honest, when you have that tough bite, or you have a fish that's looking for those natural images, when you have something dragging across the bottom and all they see, of course, is that wiggle of the tail or what have you, and it's stirring up bottom. I don't know. I'm not a fish, but that looks about as natural and as delicious as it could ever be.
Well, I know I'd make a terrible fish because I'd eat everything.
No, now in case there's some folks on here that maybe don't know, I know you two have vast knowledge of it. What is the difference between a crankbait and a jerkbait?
You go ahead if you want, Jim.
Oh, it's pretty simple. Like, I mean, a crankbait is something that has a lip and you reel it, and it's made to dive. Some of them have a lip that's straight up and down, so they stay really close to the surface. But most of them have a lip that just goes down on a little bit of an angle. So as you reel them, they go deeper. Where a jerkbait, although it incorporates the same type of thing, it's basically meant to be up in a shallower part, be worked a lot more aggressively, allowed to suspend. I even know guys now that they wrap little bits of lead wire around the middle hook so they get it to drop just a little bit. Because I don't care what anybody says, there's something about when you use a bait that's a balsa wood bait, it's great. You keep it moving. I catch tons of fish on this stuff. You keep it moving, you catch lots of fish. But when you stop it, if a fish is following it and it starts to float up away from him quick, he might follow it. I'm covering most bets that he's not going to follow it. But if it sits in front of him, or maybe even just does this, there's a lot more chance of him eating it. And, basically one is worked really erratically. They're usually long, skinny baits, like the original Rapala shape. There's tons of them out there. You got to find something that you like yourself. And crankbaits are usually a little bit fatter, a little bit wider, the bigger lips. Some of them will dive down close to 20 feet. So, obviously you're not going to use that in the lily pad bed or something. But the edge of the weeds, deep shoals, stuff like that. I know last week watching the MLF over on Lake St. Clair, there was guys out there throwing absolute just bomb long casts with great big giant diving crankbaits and just burning them back as fast as they could to keep. If the bait would run straight, they couldn't have turned the handle any faster. Wow. And some of these guys caught huge amounts of smallmouth doing that. Now you come over here into Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence, and you try that. Yeah, you'll always catch fish on a crankbait because it just allows you to cover so much water, and it appeals to aggressive fish. Like if there's a fish there looking for chow, or a fish that's not looking for chow, when something just goes by him, he doesn't have time to inspect it. Like he doesn't get out the scanner and look for the code like we were talking about. It goes by, either he eats it or he doesn't. And you get a reaction bite, or you get just a feeding motion. And, hey, I was telling Scotty here before he came on, I'm out back last night. I'm reeling in a little square bill. And I've got this branch that's stuck up against my shore this spring. And I always complain to Scotty that there's no fish under it. It's the only branch in Cranberry Lake that doesn't have a fish under it. I think I caught one out of it this year, and I lost it. It wasn't a big one, though, I don't think. But it's all clear now, and I'm reeling the crankbait in. It's got that real nice little wobble going. It's down about 6 inches, and it comes to the branch, and I thought, I can reach to get that. So I reel it into the branch, and it just pops up over the branch. It continues to wiggle. And I'm sitting there looking at the water because it's crystal clear now. It's like the length, like 7.5, 8 feet away from me. And all I see is a white mouth. Come right up. When that crankbait hit the branch, he ate it. Yeah. And that's what we talk about, crankbaits contacting things, deflecting off them, keeping them just on the bottom. And when you fish them, one of the things that you really got to pay attention to is your rod angle. If you put your rod pointed right at the water, the lure will dive deeper. If you have your rod up straight, it's not going to go as deep. So if you're not feeling it touching something, put your rod tip down. If it's picking up some, crap off the bottom, some weeds, lift your rod up a little bit so it just intermittently touches the bottom, and that makes all the difference in the world. And with the jerk baits, as erratic as you can. I mean, some of them, like they puts the slogan "extreme slosh bait." I mean, you watch some of these guys out there working these baits, and you watch it in the water, and I don't know how a fish doesn't break its neck trying to catch it. I mean, they're just darting and dipping all over the place. Guys will learn to work them where they can twitch them and actually make them almost spin around in the water. There's so much out there that can be done. But like Chris said, Andy has a tournament down in the St. Lawrence here at Gananoque. I'll guarantee you that probably not one of those guys has a crankbait on the deck in the morning, but they'll have 3 or 4 different jerk baits.
Yeah, and that's what it seems to be. And before we started here, we were talking about the that post that I just did. I'm holding up a 610 smallie. It was an amazing fish. But finding those fish, they're kind of hunting wolf packs, right? So you have 4 or 5 fish that'll stick together. Most of the time it's 2 or 3, but And that's what I'll use. It's like a tool. I'll use a crankbait to cover a ton of water. It catches active fish. I'm making sure that it's contacting stuff, whether it's weeds, the bottom, whatever. Make it really erratic, and you can cover a ton of water. And when you get them, then you slow down and okay, they're in the area. And that's what happened that day that I was out. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we were laughing about the fact that my forearm was cramping up because you're catching so many fish. There's no complaints, but I mean, that all resulted from having thrown that crankbait.
That's awesome. We've got a couple questions in the comment section. Steve, I that's a great question in regards to what line to use with either crankbaits or jerk baits. I'll let you start, Chris.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, I mean, just because we were talking crankbaits, I mean, generally jerk baits, I use braid with a fluoro leader. That's just what I do. I mean, I typically use depending on where you're at and how big the fish are going to be, but a 10-pound braid with, or a 12, 15 somewhere in there, and then, an 8, 10, 12, whatever fluoro leader. But with the crankbaits, you hear a lot, and we get a lot of conversation about crankbaits, getting them deeper. You've got to use fluoro. You have to use fluoro. Don't use braid. Don't use mono. I mean, I call bull on that. There's a lot of different applications, and it depends on where you're fishing. If you're fishing open water and you're trying to get it down, absolutely use fluorocarbon. You can't see it. It's abrasion resistant, but it still does have stretch to it. And, so if you're fishing in and around weeds, I'll purposely use a braid, because what I want to do is snap it, pop those weeds off, and those reactions when that bait does that twist like that, it's explosive. And so that's when I'll switch to a braid. So I'll usually have 3 rods on the deck. I'll have a big rod that's meant to throw big deep diving crankbaits, another one that's I'll have fluoro on, and another that I have braid, and I just use them purposely. I always have a VMC snap. A lot of people cringe on that. They want to tie direct. I just don't find with those moving baits that they don't focus on that unless it's a really finicky day. And then what it does is allows me, I have a little box that I call on deck, and it's all my favorite stuff. I'll make 3, 4, 5 casts, switch. I'm constantly changing. If I make 10 casts and haven't bumped or hurt or got anything, I switch again. And that's just the way that I do it.
Jim has been
Chris, is there any?
Sorry, Jim.
Is there any recommendation that would come from you, from the company, if you're going to use the snap? Do you take the split ring off or leave the split ring on? I've heard some really heated discussions about that amongst some pretty good fishermen.
Yeah, it's almost like the GM Ford argument. You're never going to convince the one guy of the other. But what I can tell you is those baits are specifically engineered to be tied directly to those split rings. The bait's designed, it's tuned, the weight of the hooks. I mean, you change hooks on those baits and it changes everything. They're so dialed in and tested the way that they are. That's not to say that you can't change it for whatever reasons, if you have a favorite hook, all that. But I can tell you for sure that there are certain specific hard baits that I would take the split rings off of and use the clip direct onto the loop, and other ones where I don't. A perfect example actually is a 13 fishing jabberjaw. So that's the new one that it's got like a chatterbait kind of lip in it. It's free moving. It rocks back and forth and makes this ticking sound. It's really good. If you fish that, because it comes with a clip on it, if you don't tie directly to that clip, you'll ruin that bait completely. It does not function the way that you'll catch fish on it, but not, that thing's deadly if you tie direct.
Wow, interesting. I've got to ask too, when it comes to your snap, whether it be a swivel or not, how important is how wide the snap is?
Well, one of the things you hear all the time, and in fact, we even have the knot called the Rapala knot. And then what it is it's a loop knot. And the idea is that you don't bind down onto the line tie, whether you're tying direct or onto the split ring. It just gives it more action, more freedom. Jim alluded to it when you're fishing jerk baits, trying to get that 180 spin on itself. It works a lot better when you have a loop or more freedom there. So we actually have snaps that are designed for most purposes, but then there's a crankbait snap, which has a really wide end on it. And that's the idea to it, is that it gives lots of free motion, and it does make a definite difference between the clips. And Jim, you actually had a picture of it. Yep, that's it right there.
Yeah. You can see it right there.
See how wide it is, and it gives a lot of motion there. It doesn't bind it into this little tiny loop.
Jim, I got a question for you.
You should never use one of those. You know those brass snaps that go into a V. Should never use one of those. Like if you have them at home, take them and sell them to Scotty. He'll buy them for his.
I'll use them on all my Tokyo rigs. You're absolutely
what
right.
You do,
Make earrings out of them.
what you do is you take them in your hand, you look them over really closely, you walk over, you step on the little lever on the bottom of the can, and you go, I should have listened. Plus, these ones can't pull out. Braided line puts incredible stress on everything. I didn't deal with that when I fished in tournaments. Braided was just a brand new thing that was coming. In fact, I remember the first time I ever got a spool of fire line from Brent Power and Heather Page, whom you filled in behind when they didn't move. And I looked at it and thought, yeah, right. As if this is going to work. Little did you know where braided line was going to go, you know?
Yeah, and you know what's amazing, especially when you're talking any baits, crankbaits, jerk baits, anything with 3 hooks or treble hooks on them, there's always that possibility of losing fish. I mean, they get it. I don't know what it is about them. You think the more hooks, the more they bind, but you do lose them. Not like, you know, that single hook, the plastics through them, right? And you know, you can decide to go with either, when getting back to the question of line, when I go to a braid, even though I'm trying to snap weeds and bring it through, I've dropped down just for that reason, Jim. I go to a medium action rod, even when I'm doing that, because I want to compensate for, I don't want a medium heavy with braid that has 3% stretch, hit a fish and either bend a hook straight out, which you can do easily, or right beside the boat. But I want to give them that chance to suck it in. And that's, you know, when I'm using the braid, the big heavy stuff like that heavy rod that I'm saying I'm throwing those big cranks on, that's a long 7-9 medium heavy. I want that heavy so I can chuck it out, but I'm still looking for more parabolic action just so I'm not ripping hooks out, you know.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, because a lot of times when fish eat lures, like big top waters, you know, walk the dog type baits, stuff like that, rattle baits, crank baits, jerk baits, the lure doesn't go in their mouth; it's stuck in the front of it. So if you apply a lot of pressure, you're going to rip the hook out. That's why you always hear me say, you just side sweep the hook, keep the rod bent, and even if the fish just is hooked like he's gaffed but not penetrated or anything, the number of fish that I've seen come in the boat that I just lifted them into the boat because they were coming and everything was right, and you really got to learn how to do that. Just sweep them up into the boat, you lay them down, and you don't bring them in like garbage. I see that done, and it really bothers me. You bring the fish in, just lay it on the deck, and as soon as your rod goes straight, the lure just falls out of the fish's mouth. You didn't have them hooked. If that rod wasn't bent all the time, it would have come off right away. That's why you always lose fish at the side of the boat. You keep that rod bent the whole time. He's coming in. You got pressure. You get to the side. Your buddy's getting the net or trying to grab it. You let the rod go straight. The pressure's gone, and it's, where did my fish go?
Yeah. Well, the best thing though is you can always blame your buddy with a net.
Absolutely.
Some guys are pistols.
Yeah. But you know, one of the things that I mean, I gotta say, it sounds a little lame maybe because I work for the company, but I love terminal tackle and playing with, you know, new things and how to make things better and tweaking and all that. And I keep saying VMC's making terminal sexy again, but you know, one of the things that, I mean, Scotty, you were talking about it with soft plastics. I mean, who doesn't throw, either a soft stick bait like a Senko or any of those, or now, of course, the Nico rig. I mean, it's just, I mean, everybody's catching fish on those things. I mean, much the same bait, but we've been using those O-rings for so long. I mean, even us VMC, we have one of the, you know, the cylinders where you can roll the O-ring on. But again, another idea that came from our guys and the pros was what we call our crossover ring now. So one of the inherent problems with a round ring is, of course, it'll roll up and down. So then you put on 2 and you do the cross because it doesn't quite work. And so what we've done is come up with this rubber ring, and it has an applicator tool. So it's the crossover pliers, and it conveniently has these rings in the handle. So you can just pull one out, pop it over the applicator here, and then you just stretch and you put your bait in there. The amazing thing is because it's flat, it doesn't roll, But the very best thing, and what's a patented piece that we have on that, is the very top of it, and it's almost impossible to show you because it's so small. It essentially has kind of like a camelback. It's a hump or a mountain that has a hole through this way and a hole through that way. So you can take that, and I've got a couple of them hooked up with, so I've got just a little 4-inch, and you can see that ring there. It's flat. It holds perfectly well, doesn't roll, and then you put the hook through that little top, or on the exact same hook, you hook it the other way because it has the channel, and now you've got the Nico rig all set up. And it's the same ring, doesn't roll off, it's easy applicated, and then you have your choice of either, horizontal or vertical. I mean, it's just a simple little, how do you improve on an O-ring? And yet they've done that. And I can lay no claim to that one. That was done before me, but to me, it was awesome. I end up with, I'm always having to reload this thing because all my buddies are using them on the back of the boat. The next thing I go and they're empty. But a fantastic little tool. And who doesn't use soft stick baits? Everybody does at some point, and now you have an easier, better way to hook them. It's pretty exciting.
Awesome stuff. Steve Shaw has brought up.
That really caught my eye when I saw it.
Yeah. Steve Shaw's brought up a good point here, and I have to agree. And Chris, since we have you here, sure. I love your VMC drop shot hooks. I love, the 2 swivels that you're able to tie, a heavier gauge line to the top so you can fight just the fish. And if you end up getting that weight hooked up, you can snap off with a lighter line at the bottom. A lot of people will say it's too much tackle. It's too much terminal tackle. It's a distraction to the fish. I like the ease of it. But when it comes to the weedless, you have a wire guard. Is there any thought about putting a fluorocarbon guard as opposed to the wire?
Well, in this case, that's fluorocarbon.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's a heavy, I believe that's 50-pound fluorocarbon with an epoxy glue here. So okay. That's what is on there. Now, the other thing we do, and that's actually on these ones. I was referring to the Tokyo rig that is the Finesse Nico on it. And that Finesse Nico, I didn't have them plain, but I've got them here on the Tokyo. They've actually got, if you can buy this hook separately, and you can see that little piece here. And what that is fluorocarbon on that hook. So it does a couple things. One, in this case with the Tokyo rig, or if you're using that when you're drop shotting, you can thread a soft plastic on there, and that it'll go over this and act as a keeper. And it is surprisingly tough. It is really tough. The other thing you can do is Texas rig. So you can make it weedless by hooking this in, tying on the piece of the soft plastic, and then of course putting it into the body. So you can do a little fine Texas rig on these, which works great not only drop shotting, or in this case with the Tokyo rig, but it also works really well just by itself. So if you're throwing soft finesse stuff, anything, and that hook is deadly sharp. That Nico hook it's scary.
Carrie is asking, and I knew someone was going to ask, that last bait that you held up, I think it was the Finesse Nico that had the plastic hanging out the sides, of course, the weight at the bottom. Yeah. There you go, Carrie.
Yeah, so this is just simply a soft stick bait, whatever brand is your favorite. This has got that crossover ring on it and the Nico hook. What's really cool down here is it's the Nico skirt that we do as well. And so it's got a lead weight that goes up into the body, and it just has this hair that it really just gives it something extra. And you can get various different colors of them. In fact, we have a whole Nico kit where you get the hooks, the weights, the everything with it. So it's kind of a nifty little deal too.
Wow, that's awesome.
I got just a quick look, Scotty. That's the hooks that he was talking about.
Okay.
That's them.
With the fluorocarbon on them.
Yeah, and you can see that the big thing for us is that 3% turn on it. Doesn't sound like much, but you just bend that tip of the hook just a little bit, that when, it can't come out. If they're in a lockjaw situation, that thing's getting stuck in flesh. So.
Well, Carrie's asking, is that kit Is there a name for it that you can?
Yeah, it's really it was a real thoughtful name. We spent a lot of time on it. Nico Kit. And so you can see it's got the it's got the different size hooks there, the weedless. It's got the in fact it's one missing. That's the one on there, but it's got the weights with the skirt, and then of course the weights by themselves. The interesting thing with the Nico is that you can bounce it across the bottom. One of the things we use a lot is these half moon jigs or half moon weights, and that'll go in the end. And the whole idea is you leave that half moon out, so when you're going across a hard bottom, it's tick, 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 tick. It's it annoys the heck out of them. It's great.
Well, Kerry's won a bunch of tournaments this summer already, and so as reigning champion, he's got to get every little edge that he can. You've certainly helped him out in a big way, so thanks for that, Chris. Jim, there was a question back talking about crankbaits, and of course, everybody says, you got to vary the speed in order to, let the fish tell you what it is that they're looking for. Kerry was asking a question in the fall when it comes to crankbaits. What do you like? Do you like to slow it down a little bit, or are you speeding it up?
Well, I'll try whatever. And when I catch a fish, you always got to remember what you were doing when you caught the fish. That's really important. Paying attention. I've seen guys with me, and I'm fishing with them, and they're working a jig or something, or a crankbait or whatever. They're working it really slow, lackadaisical. They're looking around, whatever else. And boom, they catch a fish, and the next cast, they're all pumped up now. They fired up. They're reeling it back like a maniac. They're excited. They want to catch another fish, and they're not catching anything. And then they start looking around a few casts later, and they're reeling it real slow. And you have to let the fish, you got to let them decide. You really got to let them decide. You try it, try some different speeds. I'm always great one to watch Bassmaster Elite when they come to the St. Lawrence or the Eastern Basin here, or the Ontario and that. And you'll watch them jump from boat to boat, and a lot of the guys are fishing jerkbaits in the earlier tournaments. And you'll see one guy giving it like 3 quick flicks, and then a quick pause, and then 1 flick, then 3 quick, and they'll be doing that. And the film will come back to them 15 minutes later, and they're doing 1 jerk, 1 jerk, 1 jerk. And sure enough, they catch a fish because they've come back to them because they've caught a fish, and they're doing the same thing that they caught the fish on. Yeah. That's what they do. They always stick. You can read into the way these cameras jump around, how they always show up on the 15 seconds before they catch a fish. They're working pretty hard at that in the studio to show you that stuff, and it's really, really cool. But once again, it doesn't make a difference winter, summer. You got to experiment. And I talk to people all the time about this. Most important thing in fishing is the depth.
Yeah.
Most important thing is the depth, because if your lure isn't where the fish are, you can't catch them. And that's what you got to pay the most attention to. It's really, really true.
And that's what I was referring to when I have that on deck box that I was talking about. I'm not just switching colors. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a believer that color is going to make an extreme difference in most cases. We've all seen those days where it definitely does, and you can't argue it. But generally, with a fast-moving reaction bait like that, it's either, like Jim said, it's either the depth you're getting it to, ricocheting it off of stuff, ripping it out of stuff. But a lot of times, it can be just the shape of the body. If you get a real fat crankbait that has a wide wobble that's swinging its butt end around, or you get one of the new, like our Ott's Garage or any of the other thin crankbaits that are flat-sided, I mean, they're wobbling like this. It's a really tight deal. And that's what I'll be switching up to. I'll try the different depths. I'll try the different, what do they want? A lot of times I find that, it's really that. They want a really tight action, or they want something that's a little wider. And then you start dialing in colors when you start getting to that point. And that's the way I always fish them. I just enjoy figuring that little puzzle out.
Square bill or rounded bill? What do you like the best, Chris?
It depends on what you're throwing. If you're going to be in a round cover, 100% a square bill, because what it does is it allows it to, and a lot of times those baits, they're designed to ricochet off that bill and not get caught on stuff. So if you're going to fish around anything that you're going to be contacting real heavily, especially more because with those bills, you don't get real deep. So in the shallower water, if you're going to be throwing it around docks, if you're going to throw it in the lily pads, around rocks, anything, if you're not bashing into something, then you're not doing it right. The round bills tend to be more for depth. It's like our DT series we were talking about. Those are tools. I mean, you have the various different depths. Pick up the one you want to get to the depth you want, and it's like a bait delivery system, essentially.
I love that. Steve's brought up a great point here. We've talked a lot about Rapala, and we've talked a lot about VMC. As a walleye guy, I love my Storm products. Everybody put up their hand who has caught a fish with a chug bug. I think everybody has caught a fish with a chug bug. In the land of Storm, is there anything new that is coming?
Oh, you know what? Honest to God, I got chills just even thinking about this one. So we work with our pros, and when you hear a guy like Wheeler say that is the best swim bait I have ever thrown, bar none, in a crowd where he's not being watched, it's just, you know you're onto something. And that's what our Largo shad is. I mean, this thing it's new this year. It's soft, but it's firm enough to hold. It's got a little tail back here. It's the boot tail, but it's got a little breakable piece. You can actually take that tail and you can pull that off, so you can get a wide or tight action. Just what we were just talking about, wide wobbles, tight wobble. But you combine that with this hybrid swim bait hook, it has a cork through thread on this. And we were joking this year, we caught so many walleye. I caught muskie on these. I was really fortunate that they was corner hooked and not bitten off. But I went 3.5 weeks and used one. It never ripped off. It kept catching fish, and to the point where, I mean, I could sell them to my buddies in the boat because they were that good. I mean, there is something about that bait falling with that white tail. And I mean, we were just using it the other day again. That thing, whether it's for smallmouth, for walleye, I mean, if you're crazy enough to fish for pike like that, I mean, it's going to stay on. That's the greatest thing about that corkscrew head. And you can put on your plastic of choice, or in this case, the Storm bait that, it is phenomenal. The colors in them are great. Like, I mean, that perch color is my favorite. It's not much quite like that.
That is dirty. Wow.
That's
stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we have talked a lot about fishing, and guys, if you have any more questions, by all means, throw them in the comments. You've got two of the best right now that can give you the 411 on just about anything. But Chris, I do want to get to, I would say this would be your forte, your passion. A lot of people don't maybe know you for this. Some of your columnists is your love for photography.
Yeah.
You are quite the photographer, and you've written some great articles in the past, but the pictures and photos that go along with it, holy smokes. Tell us a little bit about the importance of good photography if you are trying to gain a position as a pro staffer, or you're just trying to capture a great memory.
It's funny because it's exactly that. I was 13 years old when I started my first column in the local paper, and I got a lot of experience writing, but it was a local paper, so there weren't many pictures. But when I switched to gloss or magazines, they would be asking for photos to go with the articles. And so I kind of picked up a camera because I was a writer who was going to take some pictures. But I quickly realized that click can mean the same amount of money as 6 or 8 hours put into an article. So I was like, hey, wait a minute. I may not be that bright, but I'm bright enough to figure this one out. and I'm very, very lucky in what I do, and that I get to travel and do some crazy stuff that, I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't be able to do on a personal level. So you take some really awesome photos just by circumstance. I mean, you could be a total schmuck and can't take pictures in some of those situations, and they're just gorgeous. But I love the creative part of it. I hate to say it, but I do love the challenge of getting a good photo as much as getting a good fish. I enjoy getting out in the boat, and I get to spend a lot of time on the water and with people that I want to see them have success. And when I get to take pictures of them and then show them, and they're that excited about not only a moment that we got to share and a big fish, but like you said, a lifetime of memories that's there, and we get to put the fish back rather than keep it to mount on the wall. I say that tongue in cheek. I know there's graphite mounts, but I love it. And I mean, those days are even where you're not catching a whole lot. They say, oh, well, you get some great sunset shots, but there is, and it's a lot of fun. But one of the things that I don't know, there's a lot of times I hear, guys are like this straight arm thing, right? And I'll be honest with you, that one bugs me, because you know what? If I've caught a 5-pound fish, it's a 5-pound fish. It doesn't matter whether I hold it like this or like this. But when I'm taking shots, I like to get up close to those fish, and it's not about making it look bigger. This is not an ego thing. This is about a beautiful fish, and I want to capture the details. And we've all seen them, those smallies. You just stand back and go, my gosh, they're gorgeous. Or some of the trout species. That's what it's about. Get up close, get those fish. It doesn't do it any justice if you stand back, hold it here, and it doesn't look good. And a lot of times it can be just a matter, like, our phones are so good. In fact, the first cover my wife is actually here. I'm a little worried about it, but the first cover I ever shot for Outdoor Canada magazine was shot on my phone. I have $15,000 of camera gear stuffed in the boat, and I'm over the side clicking it by myself on my cell phone, and that's what they used. But the cameras are so good, you don't have to do or buy crazy gear. Don't get convinced that you can't take good shots without that, and that's what I try to teach people and tell people. Use your phone, take it from different angles, understand. And one of the biggest things is called the rule of thirds. So when there's a grid pattern, that'll be 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines, and that's not just so that you hold things straight. If you have those 2 vertical lines and you put your subject into one of them, or in one of those vertices where they connect, whether it's the eye of the fish if you're up really close, or if you stand back and instead of having your guy centered in the middle holding up the fish, pull it off the side and capture some of the background. Really, really simple things. Take it from down below, take it from up high, and move that fish around, get some different shots, experiment. It's free. We don't have to pay for film, and those darn cameras take such great shots. You'll have the exact same thing. It's just a lifetime of awesome photography that's fun to share.
Great advice. Absolutely fantastic.
I posted a picture the other night of a bass I caught out the back here, and some guy, I don't know him, I thought it was really funny. He sent me a little note on the side, and he said, "Wow, Big Jim, nice fish. I wish I could sit in the lawn chair out back in the evening and catch bass like that." He says, I have a $60,000 boat, and I got skunked last week one day, and and I said, well, I'm just blessed. It's what it is, and I'm pretty lucky. And he said to me, would you be able to share with me what lens you used on that fish? And then he quoted some number of a lens from a camera.
Yeah.
And I said, what's that? I don't know what that is. Is that some Fandango lens? He goes, yeah, it's $3,500. I said, oh, it's just a cheap one.
Yeah.
Oh my God. He says, it's so funny. I said, here it is right here. There's my lens.
Yeah, I didn't even wipe it off.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I'm ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, let me get my lens cloth. Yeah, and that's the thing that, they take such phenomenal photos. The only difference between, a phone like that and some of the bigger gear now is in somebody who knows what they're doing. There's lots of videos online where you see people like, those comparison videos. You tell me which I'm using, and the guy's shooting with just his phone, and you can't even tell. But the only difference really is the size of the sensor. So if you're doing stuff purposely to put down billboards or on the side of a truck or these giant photos, they don't blow up well that way. But they take exquisite photos. In fact, it's frustrating sometimes. I'll snap a quick picture, or a buddy will be snapping pictures over my shoulder and end up with better lit photos than what I have in my big camera, because they just figure it out that quick. I depend on afterwards Photoshop, and I'm not altering fish or anything like that, but you just you blow up highlights, and it's fun. I like that creative side of it. I hate to paint, but I love to play around with the shots that way. But one of the things that I think is really, really important.
I remember when I started fishing. Sorry, I remember when I started fishing, we used to have the old Kodak Instamatic where you put the little square flash cube in.
Oh yeah,
the one
that blow up on you.
The thing would rotate. Sometimes they would blow up.
Yeah, it had like a little SOS.
I eventually bought a camera that was a real one. We were taking pictures one day, and it actually caught on fire. And I threw it in the lake, and then I went and I spent like $350 on a camera, and all my buddies were like, "Oh my God, you spent $350 on a camera!" But the camera actually had flames coming off the top.
That's
from the flash tubes.
That's when you need a picture of or a picture of your camera at that point. Holy smokes!
Oh, I just pitched it.
What I was going to say, though, is one of the most important things is, I mean, some of these fish, like, there's a lot of arguments. You see it on social media about carrying fish around for multiple fish shots and doing that kind of thing. And, I'm actually just about to release a video on YouTube to explain how I do things and how I have it set up, because to me, taking care of the fish is the utmost importance. If I know that I'm going to be in an area, I have the live well filled already. I've got live release juice in there of some sort, whatever it is I have in the boat. I use a lot of the G2 stuff, and you're putting the fish into something that is going to be non-stress. I mean, if it's 100 degrees out and that live well's don't even think about it. Take a few shots, get the fish back. That's your situation. It is what it is. Don't kill a fish for a photo. That's silly. And I have a good friend of mine, we share too, Pete Bosselman. I mean, he and I have gone out and done some fishing. He does only muskie, and his rule, and it's what I've actually taken on for myself, is that fish is not to be out of the water for more than 20 seconds. And you do what you need to do. It's great. He has an awesome system where he's got a gigantic net that he hangs over, and the fish is comfortable in the water. It's not thrashing. It's not hurting itself. I have the time to get my camera gear already ready, set the lighting, set flashes, do all those kind of things. And then it's like, okay, go, Pete. And he'll pick it up, click, 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 and then down into the water it goes. And it's the same thing with any species. The muskie are bad for that. But take your photos, get a few shots, and then get it immediately back into either the live well. Like, don't let it dry out. Don't stress them. Maybe in and out a couple times. But then after that, what? Go catch another one.
Amen. Well said, Chris. Absolutely. Steve Shaw has a question for you. This past weekend, and he has money on the answer. How many jigs did Norm lose?
Oh my Lord. I have never seen anything like that. So yeah, we had a blast. It was blowing that day 70K. And I phoned him up and I said, buddy, we have not been in a boat together before. Let's go fish. Let's go up the river and we'll fish, and the wind won't be that bad. And we were kidding ourselves. It was howling, but nonetheless, we went out for fun. And that dude hooked up a jig and he flung it up underneath the trees into like 1.5 inches of water. And immediately you could hear it. It was like this as it hit the wood, and it was immediately stuck and he couldn't get it off. And it was so far up, he had to break it. And he's like, man. So he goes to the back and he pulled out a bag he had to have 100 jigs there. And he ties on another one. He says, well, this is the reason why I have so many. And he puts on another, he finagles around. He's like, he'd catch more fish if he didn't have so much downtime. Immediately, he'd throw it right out onto the wood again. He's stuck. And I can't get the boat in that shallow. He lost at least 12 jigs. I mean, oh my gosh. But his comment on every flip was, hey, if you don't get it where the bass are, then that's and I mean, it's true. He caught a really nice fish. I just posted that earlier this week, and is what it is. He's willing to sacrifice a few for some big fish, and he showed up that day. It was good.
That's funny. So 12 by the sounds of it, at least, Steve.
yeah, he went through easily a few $100 worth of stuff that day. It was pretty funny.
That's too bad. Well, guys, it's been an hour. Jim, any last questions or comments that you wanted to make?
I just want to thank Chris for coming on CFN and with us, plethora of knowledge. A person who's like a legend on both sides in Canadian fishing itself and the stuff to it, and the business aspect of it behind at the absolute highest level. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. It's been awesome having a lifelong friendship with you, Jim and Scotty. We got to all make a point. I will. So Jim and I both run Lunds, and I knew that I'd love to get him out and take a few shots. And he was in the area recently, but yet again, he said no to me. So it's not for the lack of invites. We're going to get together and fish sometime. But if you want to go, Scotty, I'd love to have you there too, and we'll take some great photos.
Absolutely. No one can catch
wood. You got dissed by Big Jim.
yeah, constantly.
Never.
Just to leave a little bit of a tease, Chris, is there anything that you can't maybe mention in full that is coming in either the Rapala line, Storm line, or VMC line that you're really excited about?
Yeah. It's funny because we actually work up to 4 to 5 years ahead, and we know the products. We're already working on them. There's a lot of R&D that goes on, so we don't come out with a bait that falls apart halfway through a cast, and we thoroughly test that. That's the fun part. There's some really cool stuff. There's it's hard for me because I'm so ingrained in some of the stuff that I'm working on today that I can accidentally mention some stuff that isn't going to be around for another year or so. But I think I did a good job this time. I didn't let any cats out of the bag, but I can tell you there's some really cool stuff coming from VMC. Rapala has some extensions to some great products that are coming that it's really exciting.
Cool stuff. Yeah. Well, listen, on behalf of Jim, myself, and our entire CFN community, Chris, thank so much for joining us tonight, spending a little bit of time and giving us some full-on knowledge on a whole wide array of stuff that perhaps we didn't know, would have liked to have known. And if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, guys and gals, make sure you put them in the comments. I know this guy below me has a habit of going back and checking some of the questions and answering them, and I'm sure Chris will do the same. So on behalf of all of us, Chris, thanks so much, and we look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night.
All the best.
Take care, buddy. Have a good weekend.